Okay, now for more insight into the state of Brazil's economy, let's turn to Remi Piet. He's a senior partner at Embellie Advisory. Good to see you. Thanks for taking time. We appreciate it.
A pleasure, Sean.
Now, just a number of years ago, when I first started here, we were talking about Brazil perhaps becoming the 5th largest economy in the world. Now look where we are. What is the outlook for the rest of 2022? Because those two stories were not very promising.
Well, it's a very interesting moment to look at Brazil, especially a few 10 months ahead of the elections between probably Bolsonaro on the far right and President Lula from the left-wing parties. When you look at 2022, you're looking at an economy that has difficulties coming out of the pandemics. Brazil is one of the countries that has been most severely impacted by the coronavirus, especially in light of the hectic management of the crisis by President Bolsonaro. But it's also a country that actually has strong assets and strong potential. It's a producing country for especially agro-industry, especially mining products that are, mining commodities are actually seeing increases of their prices over the last few months and year in terms of relative prices and demands from countries from China. And at the same time, unfortunately, there's a large growing inequalities inside the country that is severely increased right now by the international price of oil and gas that impacts the everyday citizens that have lots of trouble being able to make ends meet, and some of them, unfortunately, are really facing a very dire situation.
And inflation, that is simply an ugly problem down there. It continues to haunt the South American nation. In February, the numbers were worse than even expected. What is this rapid inflation doing to consumers?
Well, it has a very strong impact on a country, especially that doesn't face a lot of private savings. A lot of people are working, week to week, hoping to have their paycheck at the end of the month also. And so the rise of inflation, especially on the main products of everyday's life, is extremely damaging on those populations. We've seen a President Bolsonaro, which, during the pandemic has been providing bonus to be able, bonds to be able to support the population, but for a little time that actually doesn't seem to be likely to do the same thing right now, maybe for populistic reasons ahead of elections. But at the time of today, we're looking at a policy of the Ministry of the Economy, Paulo Guedes, which is much more closest to the Washington School of Economics, much more monetaristic, and not looking at providing some support to the population. And so we unfortunately are forecasting a very hard time for, let's say, the lower classes of Brazil in light of this, galloping inflation in the country.
And Remi, also a lot of discussion about the state-run oil giant Petrobras. Brazil's president fed up with skyrocketing prices, but are President Bolsonaro's efforts to install new leadership at Petrobras, is that doing the trick?
Well, absolutely. He actually changed the head of Petrobras and tried to put in place someone that will try to not put the blame on the government for increasing prices of oil and gas. Right now, 72% of the population is actually blaming the Bolsonaro government, maybe exaggerating its responsibility on the energy crisis in Brazil. And the move here from Bolsonaro was, probably to try to have more of his control of potential domestic prices on energy in Brazil. Although the policies in Petrobras is to try to align, domestic prices on international prices, and which obviously is very negative for the everyday population. What we're looking here in at stakes is what is the future of Petrobras? Are we looking at a potential future privatization of the energy giant? It's been rumored for quite some time. The latest declaration from Paulo Guedes were saying that Petrobras was not planned to be privatized before the elections at the end of the year. But at the same time, when you look at the latest news, we've seen all the part of the division of Petrobras that have been placed for sale, where you're looking at the gas station in 2017 or the gas pipelines in the north of the country, 4,500 kilometers of gas pipelines that were privatized over the last few years. And also, when you're looking at the last few years, there's a series of refineries from Petrobras that are for sales right now, and two of them already being sold.
Quick answer. Do you see Petrobras going private this year?
I don't think it will be the case, simply because the impact politically will be way too important. There's a strong, let's say, position of the Brazilian people and towards Petrobras, of having Petrobras as a Brazilian company, and in the favor of the people. Privatizing Petrobras will be extremely costly in terms of domestic politics, and that's not what we're looking forward in terms of the Paulo Guedes position. At the very beginning of the Bolsonaro term, it was rumored and might have been the case, but just 10 months ahead of the election, it's unlikely to happen.
Let's talk about that election, because given the economic situation, the political climate in Brazil, inflation, high gas prices, one has to wonder what this is going to do to Bolsonaro's re-election efforts.
No, absolutely. I mean, already we're looking at a potential very polarized elections embattled between, as I said, former President Lula and President Bolsonaro. This is further reinforced by those, rise of inflation concerns on health fronts or security fronts that usually favor against, extremist candidates. There's no candidates from the central parties of the of politics that are likely to be, running forward on those
Right.
elections. And Bolsonaro is facing, strong headwinds in this election in front of Lula that is favored in the polls.
Remi, it's a controversial question because you talked about mining, and let's throw logging in there as well. It's always something that is such a passionate issue when you talk about Brazil. What about those efforts? Do you think that you're going to see more protests? Do you see the Amazon basin becoming more and more a threat?
So first of all, Brazil is a very diverse country. You do have some states in Brazil, such as Mato Grosso, Paraná, Mato Grosso do Sul, Minas Gerais, that are very strong mining jurisdictions where mining is not, seen as impacting the Amazon forest or indigenous communities. Obviously, when you're looking at more states in the north, such as Paraná, Amapá, or Pará, this is a strong concern that always brings a lot of scrutiny from outside on the impact that it would have on the Amazon forest. We've seen strong numbers of deforestations over the last few years, somewhat linked to illegal mining,
Right.
garimpeiros, not formal mining. But in the case of Brazil, when you're looking at states such as, I was saying, Mato Grosso and others, it might be a strength for Brazil to be able to sell on international markets commodities at a good price that are actually being produced sustainably and responsibly by companies.